One of the most common rituals for beginner piano players is to start incorporating scales into their practice. Scales can start as a really exciting step on your piano journey because for many people, they mark the first thing that people learn how to do independently. But after a little while, and often too soon, scales can start to feel a little bit stale and boring and repetitive. And it's at this point that piano learners face a decision. Do they continue to practice scales because they think it's good for them and because they ought to do that? Or do they just let the scales go because they're not really sparking joy anymore? In my experience, a lot of piano learners end up taking the first option. They continue pressing through with practicing their scales because they're trying to be good learners and they're trying to do what they think they're supposed to. But over time, it just ends up getting really tedious and really boring, and they start to lose that joy of learning piano. As a piano teacher, that psychological turning point is really interesting to me because it marks one of the points when the joy of learning piano can be lost. And what I'd like to do today is share a little bit about how I teach about scales from my student-centered teaching practice to hopefully give you some perspective on why we might want to learn scales, why we might let them go, to help you make better decisions on your own. My hope is that I can help you learn how to find a bit more authentic motivation so that we can retain more joy in your piano practice. For those of you who are new here, my name is Sarah Cashmore. I'm a piano teacher based in Toronto, Canada, and I like to create YouTube videos that help people learn how to learn piano by themselves. I have a PhD in student-centered education, and I also have a real passion for heart-centered music creation. And I try to bring these two things together in how I approach music instruction. If you are a beginner in your piano journey and you're interested in gentle and joyful piano instruction, then I welcome you to subscribe to my channel and join our community of learners. With that said, let's get back to talking about how scales might add a little bit more joy in your life. Now, scales are a wonderful practice for learning your way around a piano, but I have to be honest, there are times when I don't assign them in my lessons. If I ever get a sense that adding scales to my students' practice is going to add any sense of burden or obligation to them, or if I feel that assigning scales may negatively impact their self-esteem as musicians in any way, I won't assign them. The reason is because I believe that musical ability is a gift of creative expression, not a skill to be mastered. So I ground all of my teaching on the joy of learning a new form of creative expression. And this really impacts the way that I approach scales. A lot of people push through the obligation of scale drills in the hopes that they will be rewarded with joy one day down the road. But in my experience, this really isn't the case. If you start your piano journey from a place of obligation, you are setting yourself up to continue a journey of obligation. But if you start your journey from a place of joy and delight, you can follow those good feelings and you can become a spectacular musician fueled with joy and delight. So I prefer to use the energy of joy to motivate my scale practice rather than the other way around. So how do you recover the joy of scales once you've lost it? Well, I find that the easiest way to recover a sense of joy in your scales is to remember that scales are not an end in themselves. We don't learn scales for the sake of learning scales. We learn scales to help us achieve other goals that we have at our piano. So rather than having my students think of scales as just a drill or a routine that they have to add on to their practice, I try to help my students see scales as a supportive assistant or a helpful friend who wants to help them achieve their piano goals. If your piano journey is Frodo Baggins, scales are the Samwise Gamgee who wants to carry you up that mountain. Scales are there to help you achieve your greater goals. So then my advice to you is, if you're trying to recover the joy of your scales, to stop thinking about scales as a responsibility that you are giving up, but instead think about scales as a helpful friend who wants to help you achieve your goals. Then all you need to do is identify what your true goals are with the piano, and then decide if you need this particular friend to help you get there. To help you with this, I'd like to share the 3 most common reasons why people might want to practice their scales. Then you can just decide if any of these goals align with what you're aiming for right now. And then hopefully you can decide for yourself if scales are a good idea for you right now, and if so, which ones. Okay, let's get started. Potential goal number 1 is smoothness of playing. Being able to play the piano smoothly will improve your experience all around. Smooth playing allows you to reach your notes more accurately, which is very satisfying. It allows you to play more expressively, which is personally gratifying. And it allows you to build your proficiency in piano as you're able to play more and more difficult or intricate pieces. In order to gain the skill of smooth playing, your fingers need experience reaching and pressing individual notes. Repetition really helps with this. When I was a young piano learner and I was trying to get out of my scales, I told myself that I could build those reps into my practice just by learning new songs. My reasoning was, the more songs I learn and the more I simply play songs on piano, the more I'm practicing my smoothness, right? Well, to a point that made sense, but in practice, it didn't work out quite that way. I found that the rate that I was learning these new songs was not really fast enough for me to actually improve my skills in smoothness. In reality, the pace of learning new songs was actually too slow to build any new skills in smooth playing. I was essentially capped at whatever skill level I had at the beginning of playing the piece, simply because I was playing the piece too slowly to build new skills. For another thing, I was a really bad sight reader, and it was really cumbersome for my new skills in smooth playing to be attached to how fast I was able to sight read new music. I also noticed that it was impossible for me to learn 2 things at the same time. I could either learn to read new music, or I could practice the smoothness of my playing. I couldn't do both at the same time. And so what this meant for me was that I ended up practicing my songs twice as long, first to just learn the piece, and then a second time to work on the smoothness of my playing with that piece. That got very boring very quickly. This brought me back to considering scales to improve the smoothness of my playing. I chose the easiest scales that I knew just so I could focus on building smoothness in my playing. This is when I realized how great scales could be. Scales actually let me relax into my playing because they were so easy to play compared to the music I was learning. With scales, all I had to do was learn which notes I wanted to play with which fingers. And then I could just focus on playing those notes well. I didn't have the extra baggage and pressure to also sight read music accurately. I just had to memorize which notes I wanted to play with which fingers and I could actually focus on the skill I wanted to focus on. So if smoothness of playing is a goal that you want to work on, I highly recommend trying out scales. Potential goal number 2 is learning new key signatures. As you progress in your piano journey, you are inevitably going to come across new key signatures that you've never encountered before. Now, key signatures are basically a shorthand way of identifying which black and white keys are going to be used in the song that you want to play. While it's possible to learn a song without knowing the key signature in advance, in my experience, it again takes twice as long to do so that way, because you are constantly double checking your piano versus your sheet music to make sure that you are pressing the right notes. And again, it's just easier to learn that shorthand. Again, when I was a young piano learner, I thought that I could learn key signatures on my own just by virtue of learning these new pieces. But again, I realized that I really cannot learn two things at a time. You can either learn how to play a new piece, or you can figure out the pattern of black and white notes that you are using for that piece. You cannot do both of those things at the same time. This again brought me back to trying out scales. Learning and practicing the scale of the key signature of the song that I was about to learn let me visually map out all the black and white keys that were going to be used in a particular song, with the added benefit of learning very helpful fingering that has emerged from centuries of composers and piano lessons. Scales are a pared down opportunity for you to mentally section off the different black and white keys that you're going to need for your song to help prepare you to learn it. If the songs that you're currently learning only have 1 or 2 black notes in it, you may be wondering if all of this is really necessary. Perhaps you feel that you can maintain a mental reminder of the 1 or 2 black notes that are going to be used throughout the song. That's totally fine. But as you grow in your piano journey and you start getting into songs that have 3, 4, even 5 black keys, you are going to need some kind of support to help you remember which black keys they are. And in this case, practicing the scale of the key signature you're about to play, it just prepares you for smoother learning, a smoother learning experience. So if you're learning a song in a new key signature and you want that help in preparing for this new key signature, I highly recommend scales. Potential goal number 3 is dual hand coordination. Being able to play different things with your hands is one of the earliest challenges that beginner piano players face. Dual hand coordination simply means being able to do different things with different hands, and many beginner piano players find this to be a very unnatural aspect of learning piano. However, dual hand coordination is required for a lot of things in life. We just don't really think about it that way. Whether we're washing dishes or putting on our clothes, throughout our day, we have many tasks where we're doing different things with our different hands. The difference, though, is that with these everyday tasks, we had a lot more practice leading up to doing these tasks. We started with small kid-size activities and slowly built our skill levels over the course of our lives. Well, the same thing happens with piano lessons. A good piano teacher or a good beginner piano book will introduce you to dual hand coordination in small, manageable steps. For example, in a piano book, most early piano songs start with hands in a fixed position where you just practice playing 1 or 2 notes at a time. But if you don't have access to a teacher who can help you with that, or if you're not really that interested in using a beginner piano book, practicing scales can be another really great way to build skills in dual hand coordination. Another thing that's really nice about scales is that you don't have to learn a full song in order for what you're playing to sound like music. In this regard, I actually find scales to be even easier than beginner piano books, because with beginner piano book, you're focusing on so many different skills at the same time. You're learning your notes, you're trying to learn the right fingering, you are learning to read music, you're keeping rhythm. There's a lot to keep in mind, right? But with scales, once you know the notes that you want to play and the fingers you want to use for those notes, you're set. You can just go for it. And another thing that's really nice about scales is that they sound musical right away. Scales are really pleasant sounding, they're enjoyable to play, and you don't have the added pressure of like learning how to read music in order to get this benefit. So I think they're fantastic. So if you are interested in working on your hand coordination, consider some scales. So these have been the biggest benefits that I see scales offering people who are early on in their piano journey. I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that this helps you discern if scales are right for you at this time. I hope this video helped you see scales not just as a drill to be attached to your piano practice, but as a supportive, helpful friend who wants to help you on your journey. As always, I am open to your questions, so please leave any comments that you have down below. And I would love to also hear from you. Do you use scales as part of your practice? Do you enjoy them? Do you see them contributing to your piano journey in any way? I'd really love to hear from you. Thanks again so much for tuning in, and best of luck.